Hi, my name is Whit. I'm here at Wits End Media, and I make some DaVinci Resolve tutorials on YouTube. And today I'm going to be talking about my color grading workflow, which honestly, I'm not going to say it's the easiest thing, but I'm not going to also say it's the most pro thing you'll ever learn. I would consider it to be a very good color grading workflow, and it's something I've been using for a little while now. And I'm proud of some of the photos that have turned out through this workflow. It's definitely taken me some time to refine it, but without further ado, let's just jump into Resolve. All right, so we're inside here at DaVinci Resolve, and to give us all a clean slate so we're all on the same page and no one's confused, I'm just going to go up here to Workspace and reset UI Layout. And then I'm going to turn on full screen window for everything looks nice and clean for YouTube. And so this is the default preview. First thing I'm going to do is open up my effects, close my timeline, move this over a little bit, scrunch up my clips, and I don't need it that big. I'm also going to click this toolbar right here. If you don't show that, like your power grades and timeline stuff, that won't show up, which is very important. I don't know why that isn't on default, but very important. Make sure you click that button. And honestly, this looks good. So we're back to a starting pace. And the way my color grading workflow works is I actually already have a power grade saved because I don't want to remember this every single time. So it's just right here. So I'm just going to delete this node and throw this on here. And then I'm just going to close my clips and gallery because I don't need those anymore. And so this is what my workflow goes. If we go down the timeline, I have my IDT, so I go from Rec 799 or whatever the color space was to DaVinci Wide Gamut and DaVinci Intermediate, which then later down the pipeline right here is when I just go back to Rec 79. And obviously, especially for this IDT, make sure that you put in the correct color space. This photo I just shot it on my iPhone 14 Pro Max. Pretty nice phone, nice camera, but this definitely photo could use a little bit more work. But so there's just those two notes. The second row though, this is just to balance the image, so make sure that the shadows and highlights, everything's working, all the colors are right, the contrast, just everything is crisp and perfect. The second row is I like to call my effects row. So I have my saturation, vignette, halation, mask, and sharp. And I don't use every single one of these every time I edit a photo. And even in the first row, I don't use every single node, but I have used all these nodes at some point in my color grading. So I just leave in the pipeline because if I leave it empty, it doesn't hurt anything. And then this last row is just kind of the last finish up touches, noise reduction, grain if I need it. That ODT like talked about, and then a LUT, which I always keep on 0.1, which if we decompose this right now, it's going from Rec 709 to Rec 709 and Cineon Film Log. And then this LUT, if we just go to the LUTs, Film Looks, let me change this to this. It's just this Rec 709 Kodak 2383, and I think this one, yep, it's D60. But to put that back together, I'm just gonna select them all. Create compound node, right click, node label. I just like name it LUT and put it back there. Then go to this key and change the output to 0.1. So then now we're back to where we were. We can see it makes a little bit of adjustment, not too much, but I can boost this up depending on the image. And it really depends because some images you want to look neutral, like you don't want to fake the colors, but some stuff you want to give that moody feel. So that LUT's it's just there in case I need it. In 0.1, it does change the image a little bit. It's nothing too crazy, and I can always change that if I need to. First thing, I do want to make a note though, I am not on my color grading monitor. This monitor doesn't have bad colors, so the colors you might see on YouTube might not look the way I'm looking at it. But let's just go through here. So first node is the HDR. So that's just going to be the HDR palette down here in the left. And we have 6 different color wheels. It goes black, dark, shadow, light, highlight, specular. Specular, if you have something that high, like that is bright. So I always start my shadows first though. So you can click these little buttons and it'll actually show which parts are that. So black, they're there. So I can just change the exposure up or down. And it doesn't look like it's too much though. Maybe bring it down a little. Then dark. Just these. You can see this makes a little bit more effect. So I'm just going to make this a little bit darker, a little bit more moody. Then move on to shadow. Shadow makes a huge difference. Shadow and light are the two that make the most difference. So something about it there. Then I usually just skip to highlights. There's a little dot right there, and it probably isn't the best practice, but I always turn my highlights all the way down to -6, just because, in my personal opinion, and everyone has their own color grading opinions. It's all look and perspective. I don't like super bright highlights. I like my images looking more, I wouldn't say duller, but just not super bright. So I always turn that down, and usually there's not too much stuff in the highlight section anyways. And then light, let's see what we can do. That down a little bit for I can see a little bit more detail in that plate right here. And like I said, this might actually not look good because I'm not on my right monitor. But so let's move on to the Pri A. This is primary A. And this is just our primary wheels. I usually mainly adjust the temperature and the tint in this node, but since this was shot on my iPhone, it's actually already pretty good. This would mainly be for if I'm shooting like out of like a normal camera, like my Canon EOS R, and I do like manual temperature and all that, and I might be a little off. That's where I like to change this. And then I also have lift gamma gain, which I don't usually touch too much, but I don't think I need to touch anything in this primer A. So let's move on to our log A, and that's just going to be my log wheels. So I can go right here, click here, and go into here. And so we got shadow, midtone, and highlights, and midtone is the one I really like to affect. So right down, maybe bring the highlights up a little, bring that shadows down, and we can see how much that changed the image just with those little adjustments. You can even see more yellow and like this mac and cheese and all that. And I usually do contrast at the very end, even though I have it right here in this pipeline, which makes more sense if I do it before. I just like having it right there, but I don't like adjusting the contrast first, especially before saturation, because saturation is going to already add more contrast. So you want to do contrast towards the end of your progress for you're not really limiting yourself. So let's move on to saturation. I can just go over here to our curves. I like to go to the third section, and we got hue versus sat. So I know a lot of people, they just like going over here to like the primaries and just boosting up that saturation right here or right here. And I personally don't like doing that. I like adjusting each color to its perfect saturation, if you would. Because some colors I like more, some I don't. And if you get some colors that are stagnant, it's just, eh. So I'm going to do yellow first because I can tell there's already going to be a lot of yellow in here. So let's boost. Ooh, doesn't take much. So probably somewhere around there. Move on to green. And there's like no green in here. Oh, so I need to turn on our scopes. There we go. So there's our scope. So we can actually see when I boost it, it's moving a little, not much. I can kind of see in the mac and cheese actually. I'm just going to put it down a little. Do our teal. That actually does nothing. I'm just gonna leave that blank. Let's go to our dark blue, purple, whatever you want to call it. I'm gonna turn that down actually, because if you look over here in this corner, you can see that blue, and I don't really want that because I'm more focused on like the yellows. Excuse me, in this image. So I'm just gonna turn that all the way down. Pink. Let's see what that is. Ooh, that does change a little bit. I'm just going to bring that down a little, probably right there. And then red. And that looks good about there on my screen. So if we do Control or Command D, we can see before and after. And that definitely brings out color, which saturation should. That's looking pretty good. Let's move on to our vignette. I know a lot of people, they like to just go here and use the vignette tool or built-in effect. I personally don't like doing that. I always do make my own. So go to our windows, make a circle, make sure to feather just a little bit more and extra. And I like to put the image where everything I want focus on this middle ring. So I'm just going to line this up to the plate. Make it maybe a little bit bigger. That looks good. And make sure to go down here and click this button, which means it'll do the inverse. So not going to affect what's in the image, but what's outside the image. And then I go to my primaries, go to my offset, and I usually turn this down to 15, which always seems to look good. So if we do Control D, before and after, that makes a huge difference, and I love that vignette. It just focuses more on the subject. Next is halation, and if this is only in DaVinci Resolve Studio, but you can, it's the same thing if you just use glow. It's just halation looks a little bit better. You could use a glow effect, mess with that, but since I do have DaVinci Resolve Studio, I'm just gonna throw a halation on there, and that's really bright at first. Changes to 0.3. I like that. So like if we look full screen, we can see all these highlights just have this little orange tint around it, and I really like that. And you can do the same thing with the glow. It doesn't look as good as halation, but you can still kind of mimic the same effect. Then we got mask, which that's mainly for if I have like objects that specifically need like a background remove or a color change. I don't think there's anything in this image that I'm unsatisfied with. I think this looks fine. Sharp, that's if something's out of focus, so I can always change that, which this seems to be perfectly fine. Noise reduction and grain, that's more for video. There's not really that much noise in photos. If there's a lot of noise in your photos, that's probably if you're shooting like a night shot or something, and those are just hard in general. But this doesn't have any noise in it, and then grain, I just use the film grain effect that is right here. And for the noise reduction, I always use these motion effects down here. And a tip with the noise reduction, if you are using it, always like on the temporal, use better, and then on the spatial, use enhanced. I always find it takes a lot longer to render with these, but trust me, it looks so much smoother and better if you use enhanced and better than using like the lower presets. It does take more on your system. What I suggest doing is like putting these effects on, and then like over here, just turning them off for the rest of your until you're finished editing, and then turn them back on right before you're about to export it. Just because it does take a lot on your system, even my system, which like I have 80 gigs of RAM, a 3060, and obviously it's not the most impressive computer, but it's still a pretty dang good computer, and it takes a lot, especially with noise reduction and grain, and even in the sharp. But that's about it. We just go over here, we can see the before and after. It's a completely different photo. And to save this, of course, I can go to my gallery, go to my stills, right click here, grab still, right click here again and click export, and that'll bring us to the file window, and then we can select what type of file, rename it, where we want to do it. But that's it. That's my color grading workflow. I hope you guys found this useful. Like I said, it's probably not the best color grading workflow in the world, but it's what I've been using. I'm very happy with it. I've been using it for a while, and I've gotten some really good photos and videos graded with this workflow. So I hope it helps you guys. Make sure to check the description. I'm going to start a Patreon, which I think is up and running now. So if you want to donate, and like, subscribe, comment if you have any video ideas, and have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.